All right, so big news over at Intel, right? I mean, you probably saw the headlines. Pat Gelsinger's out as CEO.
Yeah, it change.
But we're going to go deeper than just like the surface here. We're going to look at what this really means for Intel.
Absolute.
Not just for them, though, but for like the whole tech world, which ultimately means for you listening, too.
Right.
We've got this analysis we're going to deep dive into, and it's pretty insightful stuff. So let's get into it.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting is how much power Intel has.
Mm.
I mean, their decisions, they really send these, like, shockwaves through the whole tech industry.
Definitely, yeah. So to really get this whole picture, we got to rewind a bit.
Okay.
Intel hasn't exactly been, crushing it these past few years.
Right.
They've been losing ground to like AMD and NVIDIA.
Especially in chip design and manufacturing.
Especially in chip design and manufacturing, the cutting edge stuff.
Yeah, and that brings us to the 800-pound gorilla,
Yeah.
TSMC.
Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
They're the powerhouse.
They're the ones making chips for like everybody.
Even companies that design their own chips.
Yeah, so it's bigger than just Intel, right?
Oh, absolutely.
This is a global reliance on TSMC.
Yeah, it's like the digital age's oil industry in a way.
Mm.
Whoever controls that advanced chip making, they've got this massive advantage.
Strategically, yeah.
And right now, it's TSMC.
So enter Pat Gelsinger, 2021. He takes over as CEO.
Comes in swinging for the fences, right?
Oh, yeah. Aiming to get Intel back on top.
Big goals.
Remember that 5 nodes in 4 years plan?
Look, Jesus.
Trying to basically just like leapfrog everybody else.
Yeah, it was bold considering where they were at
Oh, for sure.
compared to TSMC.
So they weren't going to just play catch up. They were going to
Take the lead.
take the lead. And to prove that, or to show that, $20 billion invested in new factories.
In Arizona.
In Arizona. Plus, pushing for the GPS Act
Bring those chips back to the U.S.
to boost U.S. production. So it seemed like he was playing this long game, betting on a future where Intel was, like, back in charge.
Absolutely, trying to address those concerns about relying on other countries.
Like Taiwan specifically.
Right.
But it didn't quite work out that way, did it?
No, some hiccups along the way.
We saw the delays with the Meteor Lake CPUs.
Right, those were supposed to be the next big thing.
For laptops and desktops.
For laptops and desktops.
And then there were problems with the 20A and 18A nodes.
Crucial for making those transistors smaller and more powerful.
And they were hitting roadblocks.
They were.
So we have huge goals, big spending, and then delays, technical issues, not a good combo for investors looking for a quick return.
No, that kind of news makes people nervous.
Yeah, makes sense. And then, of course, Gelsinger's exit.
Abrupt?
Abrupt, even for Intel.
You don't see that very often at a company that size.
Yeah, you don't just see a CEO walk out or get walked out suddenly like that.
Especially with those interim co-CEOs appointed too.
David Zinsner and Michelle Johnston Holthouse.
Yeah, adds to the uncertainty, for sure.
So what really happened? Was it just the pressure from, like, the board and the investors?
It's probably more than that if we look at the big picture.
Okay.
Gelsinger's was laser-focused on that manufacturing crown.
Right. He wanted to be number one.
Even if it meant,
Short-term losses.
short-term losses exactly. But the board and investors,
They might not have been on board with that.
different priorities.
So his long game wasn't really matching up with, like,
The market demands.
yeah, the market demands.
And that's a really key point because it leads to some big questions.
About Intel's future, like, what do they do now?
Stick with the ambitious plan.
Or, like, shift gears, try to make those investors happy?
Exactly.
Huge question. But before we get to that,
Yeah.
this isn't just about Intel, is it?
No, not even close.
So why should you, listening, care? What does all this have to do with you? Well, this could directly affect how much those devices you use every day cost.
Right, and even if you can get them.
Yeah.
This is the heart of the tech world. I mean, Intel's chips are everywhere.
Laptops, phones,
Data centers, cars.
cars even. So what's next for Intel? What are their options here?
Well, they could keep going with Gelsinger's plan, right? Keep investing heavily in manufacturing. Try to get that top spot back.
But that's a long...
That's a long and expensive road.
Yeah, and no guarantees.
Not at all.
It's like they're in a marathon.
Trying to catch up to sprinters.
Exactly. So the other option...
Either they shift focus, try to make those investors happy.
Focus on profits, cut back on some of that spending.
Get more out of their existing stuff.
But wouldn't that risk them falling further behind?
That's the balancing act they have to figure out. AMD, NVIDIA.
And the impact isn't just on Intel, it's the whole U.S. chip industry.
And the GPS Act, Gelsinger was all about that. Government funding for U.S. chip making. Does his leaving change anything?
Hard to say for sure.
Mm.
I mean, it's got bipartisan support, so it's probably safe.
Yep.
But Intel was going to be a big beneficiary.
So if they fault, it raises questions about the investment.
Yeah, like what's the point?
Right.
It's like a chain reaction, one wrong step.
And the whole tech landscape feels it.
Globally too, right?
Globally, absolutely. We talked about how important chip making is.
Yeah, strategically.
If Intel messes up, it shifts that balance of power.
AMD, NVIDIA,
It could get even bigger, more dominant.
and all those companies working on AI, self-driving cars, that stuff needs the best chips.
They're going to be hesitant to rely on Intel if they're not the best,
So they'll probably just stick with TSMC.
which makes TSMC even stronger.
Right. Okay, so we have Intel's rivals potentially getting stronger, TSMC getting stronger. What else? What else should we be worried about?
It makes those geopolitical worries about relying on other countries even worse.
Especially Taiwan.
If Intel can't deliver, it strengthens the argument that the U.S. is too dependent.
Which is a touchy subject right now.
Major geopolitical factor
Yeah.
could lead to even more government involvement in the chip industry,
Pushing for more U.S. manufacturing.
even with the higher costs.
And then there's the co-CEOs thing.
Right. Historic,
How often does that actually work out?
not ideal.
Leading a company like Intel, it needs
A clear vision
a clear vision, one leader,
with two people. There's a risk of conflict.
crack of leadership.
Exactly.
It's like a ship with two captains.
Each going in a different direction.
So what does this all mean for you, the person listening? What does it mean for the everyday consumer?
Well, in the short term, you probably won't notice much change.
Okay,
Your laptop's not going to suddenly stop working.
that's good.
Your phone's not going to self-destruct.
Phew.
But long term,
Yeah, long term is where it gets interesting.
long term is where it gets really interesting.
Lay it on me.
This could really impact how fast tech moves forward.
Oh, wow.
If Intel doesn't keep up, it can slow down those faster, more efficient chips,
Which we all need.
which affect everything from how our devices perform to how fast AI develops.
So this isn't just some Intel problem. It's like,
It's the whole future of tech.
wow, that's kind of scary, but also kind of exciting.
It's both. It's this huge story
Yeah.
that affects all of us, even if we don't realize it.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about Intel's struggles, Gelsinger's plans, his sudden exit, what it means for the tech world,
And the geopolitical side of things.
and most importantly, how it affects you, the listener.
It's not just some boardroom drama. This stuff matters.
It's the technology you use every day.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this whole chip manufacturing thing going on and how Intel's trying to get back on top.
Right.
But there's another layer to this that I think is really interesting, like the types of chips that Intel's going after.
Yeah. Gelsinger was really pushing Intel into some new territory, even with all those setbacks, especially with specialized chips,
Like for data centers.
data centers, artificial intelligence.
Hold on, wait. Why is that so important? I mean, don't all chips kind of do the same thing? Some are just faster.
That's what a lot of people think. But
Yeah.
the chips that are in your laptop or phone, they're way different from what you need in a data center or for training AI.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, those need chips that can handle mountains of data and crazy complex calculations.
So it's not just about speed. It's like they're designed for these super specific tasks.
Exactly. And Gelsinger saw that as like Intel's path to dominating again.
So he was betting on the future.
Betting on the future, not just making your phone a little faster each year.
Right.
Unlocking what AI can do, processing
Yeah.
data in ways we haven't even imagined.
So he steers them towards these specialized chips. Did it work? Did they make any progress?
They had some wins. Definitely,
Yeah.
they made some headway with their Habana Labs AI chips.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those.
Some of the big AI companies are using them, and they've also been working on chips for 5G,
For all that network stuff.
for the infrastructure, yeah.
So even with all the problems, they were still making moves in these new areas.
They were.
But does Gelsinger leaving mean they give up on all that?
That's the big question, isn't it? The new leadership. They might decide to just go back to basics.
Like CPUs for PCs and servers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's where they make most of their money.
It's still a huge market.
Huge market.
But wouldn't that be kind of short-sighted? The tech world moves so fast.
It does. If they don't stay ahead of the curves, they'll get left behind.
Become irrelevant.
It's a gamble.
Hmm.
Quick profits now,
Hmm.
but maybe they miss out on what's next.
The companies that control the chips that run AI,
That build the infrastructure for the next generation of wireless tech.
they're the ones shaping the future.
And if Intel doesn't get in the game, they might miss out.
So we have this internal struggle at Intel.
Right.
Competition from AMD, NVIDIA, TSMC looming over everything.
And don't forget the geopolitical side of things.
Oh, right. The government's watching all of this.
They've put a lot of money into U.S. chip making.
The Chishi PS Act.
They see Intel as a key part of that.
So if Intel fails,
It's not just bad for the company.
it affects national security.
U.S. competitiveness in tech.
This is way bigger than just business.
It's about global power now.
And the decisions being made right now at Intel.
They could shift that balance of power.
Okay, so how does this affect the person listening? What does it all mean for you? Let's talk about the most obvious thing. Your wallet.
Could all of this lead to more expensive tech? Absolutely.
Really?
If Intel keeps having problems with manufacturing, if they can't meet demand,
Which is happening already?
it could lead to shortages.
Supply and demand, prices go up.
Exactly. So that next-gen laptop you're thinking about, that
Yeah.
new gaming PC,
Oh no.
they might get more expensive if Intel can't deliver.
And it's not just the expensive stuff, is it?
Nope. Intel's chips are in everything,
Smartphones, tablets.
even smart home appliances.
So this could affect prices across the board.
It's not good news for anyone who loves their gadgets.
Not at all. And what about innovation? I mean, if they're struggling just to keep up with demand,
Right.
do they even have the time or resources to work on the next generation of chips?
That's a worry. Instead of those big jumps in performance every year,
You know, like we're used to.
we might see things slow down.
New tech could take longer to, actually be available.
Exactly. And remember those specialized chips we were talking
Well,
about?
for AI and data centers?
Those are key for all those cool advancements, like machine learning, self-driving cars.
Personalized medicine, even.
If Intel falls behind there, it slows everything down.
So this is way bigger than just a faster phone or a better camera.
It's about the future of technology itself.
Wow. So the decisions these companies are making, Intel, their competitors, the government even,
It's not just business anymore. It's about what our world will look like in a few years.
and we all have a part to play in that.
We do. It's important to understand what's going on, to think about the choices we make.
Because even just buying a new gadget.
It can have a much bigger impact than you think.
Okay, we've talked about the downsides.
The risks?
But what if Intel pulls it off? What if they actually turn things around and become the leader again?
Now, that would be something.
That's the dream, right?
If they can overcome all these challenges, if they can make those specialized chips work, it could be a whole new era for American tech.
Faster devices, huge leaps in AI.
A booming tech sector here in the U.S.,
Creating jobs.
driving innovation.
That would be incredible.
And think about the geopolitical impact.
Right, we wouldn't be so reliant on other countries anymore.
It would boost our national security.
And make us more competitive economically.
Exactly. So there's a lot on the line here,
Huge potential rewards.
but also big risks.
This is high-stakes stuff.
The tech world is always changing, and what happens today will determine what our world looks like tomorrow.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, but there's one last piece of the puzzle.
All right.
The co-CEOs, David Zinsner and Michelle Johnston Holthouse.
Yeah, what about them?
What's the deal with that whole co-CEO thing? How does that even work, and what does it mean for Intel?
It's pretty rare to see that, especially for a company as big as Intel.
Yeah, two people sharing the top job.
Usually it's just a temporary fix.
Until they find a permanent CEO.
Exactly.
So it's like having two captains on a ship.
Trying to steer through a storm.
Can they actually make it work? Can they lead Intel through all of this?
It's definitely a challenge. They have to work well
And
together
have the same vision for the company.
and be able to make decisions together.
What if they disagree?
It could create chaos.
No one knows who's in charge.
Investors get nervous.
Employees get confused.
There's a lot of pressure on those two.
Yeah, leading a company like Intel, that's a huge responsibility.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
Right.
The success or failure of this co-CEO setup, it could really impact Intel's future.
Okay, so we have this leadership situation to watch. The
Yeah.
competition with AMD, NVIDIA, TSMC, and all the geopolitical stuff happening in the background.
It's complicated.
But we wanted to break it all down for you.
Make it clear how all of this affects you, the listener.
All right, I think we've given everyone a lot to think about. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier. The idea that we as consumers have a role to play in all of this. How can we influence the tech industry? What can we actually do to make sure we're supporting the kind of innovation we want to see in the world?
That's a really important point, and it's something we should all be thinking about. You know?
Uh-huh.
The tech world, it doesn't just exist in a vacuum.
Right.
Our choices actually matter.
Yeah, like we can influence things.
Every time you buy something, you're telling those companies what you want.
So it's not just about getting the latest gadget. It's more like
Being conscious of where your money's going.
supporting the tech you actually believe in.
Exactly. Think of it like voting. Every purchase is a vote for a company and what they do.
I like that analogy.
You might not find the perfect choice, just like with voting.
Right, there are always compromises.
but you can still make informed decisions.
Okay, so research is important. What else can we do?
Think long term. Think about how long a device will last and if you can fix it.
Oh, yeah, the whole repairability thing.
It's a huge problem, this push for new products all the time.
It creates so much waste.
And it makes us think we need to upgrade constantly.
So instead of chasing the newest thing, we should be looking for
Quality, durability.
stuff that can be repaired, not just thrown away.
Exactly. Find companies that offer good warranties
That make repairs easy.
and that care about the environment.
So it's about changing how we think about tech
From disposable to durable.
and sending a message to these companies that we want products that last.
Exactly.
Okay, research, repairability, what else?
Pay attention to the software side of things, too.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just the physical device,
the apps we use.
the websites we visit, all that data we share.
So even if we buy from a good company, we still have to be careful.
Absolutely. Read those privacy policies.
Be smart about what we share online.
Support companies that are responsible with our data.
It's like we're all part of this big digital world.
And our actions have real consequences.
So we've got research, buying durable stuff, being smart about software and data.
Those are great starting points.
I think that's a lot for our listeners to consider.
It is, from Intel's problems to the global chip race to what we can do as individuals.
It's a lot to unpack.
But it's all connected and it all matters.
It's about the future of technology and our place in it.
And the decisions being made today will shape that future.
Absolutely. So stay informed, stay curious, and make those tech choices count.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Intel, the chip industry, and the future of tech.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a wild ride.
It has.
And remember, the tech world never stands still, so stay tuned for more deep dives into the stuff that matters.
We'll be back.
We'll be back.